You're listening to Built to Convert, the podcast where growth-minded marketers, founders, and creators come to level up. No hype, no guesswork, just bold insights that drive results. Let's go.
Hey everyone, I'm Tyler Lane, founder of Session Interactive and host of Built to Convert. On this show, we dive into conversations with growth-minded leaders to explore how strategy, analytics, and smart marketing decisions drive real revenue-focused growth. This episode is brought to you by Session Interactive. We help brands grow by turning complex data into clear, actionable strategies. Whether it's SEO, paid search, analytics, or content, our team helps marketers make smarter decisions and drive better results. Learn more at sessioninteractive.com. All right, guys, today we've got a good friend of mine and close business associate connection. I think we can say that. Eli Rubel, a serial entrepreneur and the driving force behind a few different companies that I have worked with directly and really enjoy a lot of the people there. Mattermade is one, demand gen agency, No Boring Design, a design subscription service, and then his newest venture, Profit Labs, which is a bookkeeping service for agencies. Really curious to talk more about that. Eli has helped companies like Dropbox, Loom, and Calm scale efficiently and has generated over 10 million in agency profits since 2020. I think it's like 10 million.1 now. If we're going to get specific, he's here to share some insights on agency growth, design innovation, and how to build profitable businesses. Eli, good to see you, man. As always, thanks for coming on the show.
Tyler, great to meet you for the first time.
Yeah, ever. We can skate by that. We just met. No. Hey, what I like to do always is, establish just some backgrounds for the guests, and tell us a little bit about. I know I've heard this story in the past, but I love hearing it, and I can resonate a bit with the art school dropout into being the serial entrepreneur. I think you're on your 5th company, is that correct? And talk to me a little bit about the story there.
Yeah, 5 are the ones that have done all right, and then there are a lot that haven't, just totally failed. So there's probably 10 plus in a graveyard somewhere that were embarrassing to talk about. But anyway,
I want to hear more about those.
We can go there. I'm happy to. So, I thought I wanted to be a photographer when I was young. I was really passionate about photography, went to art school. After about a year of art school, realized school was just not the place for me. It never had been, but I thought, I love photography enough. If I go to art school, I'll suddenly start caring about history and things. And turns out I didn't. Dropped out of art school, moved down to Los Angeles, and was waiting tables doing the starving artist thing. Sometime around 20 years old, I had what I call my quarter life crisis, where I was basically I'm having so much fun waiting tables. Everyone is having a blast. Everyone's beautiful. We're partying. Just a great time to be alive and in your 20s. But at the same time, I knew that the path that I was on, was not going to lead to the lifestyle I ultimately wanted to create for myself or for my future family. So I call it my quarter life crisis because I basically fire quit my job one morning. I'd been reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss and just was like, this doesn't sound that complicated, the stuff he's talking about. And the way that he talks about himself as a misfit who never, I really felt like I saw bits of my characteristics in how he talked about his personality. And so I was like, I can figure out this internet thing. Let's go. So quit the job, moved into my mom's basement in Portland. It was an unfinished basement, so it would flood every winter. It was not a glamorous basement, but it was good. It was motivating because I was living down there. And was like, I can't leave this basement until I've started a company. So better fucking figure it out, because you're not gonna meet any girls living in your mom's unfinished basement.
Yeah, maybe not the girls you want to attract. To each their own.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that was the beginning. I started a software company. The software company I started ended up pivoting into a totally different software company. That one I raised venture capital for. We ended up getting acquired. That whole story is hilarious. When it first happened, I just would tell people, yeah, we got acquired. It's great. Awesome. But the true story that I now tell and kind of chuckle about is our VCs told us that we needed to shut the business down and they weren't going to give us any more money on the same day that a random company approached us about buying us. And it just, I literally called our VCs back. I was like, hey, you're not going to believe this, but someone just told me they want to buy the company. They're like, yeah, sure, kid. Cool. Chase that down. And long story short, they did end up buying us. So it was just kind of a funny first start to the business world.
No, that's wild. I think a couple of things resonate with me around the art school piece. Like, hey, I'm going to be a photographer. I'm going to figure that out. And then obviously just realizing like, okay, maybe not. I had a similar story, not to talk about myself the whole time here, but around wanting to be a graphic designer. You remember those those Photoshop tutorials and things like that? Like followed it. I was obsessed with that, learning the platforms, and quickly realized I'm like, okay, do not want anything to do with design. Love it. Glad I've got some principles, but I love that. Like, be creative. You have an hour and you're billable. So those things resonate. I'm glad you were able to break out and find that. Fast forward now with 2 established agencies. We'll talk about them, Mattermade and No Boring Design, but you've kind of pivoted, right? And I think around fixating on an agency that's focused around bookkeeping and those financial services for clients. What did you learn specifically from MBD and Mattermade, that just the desire to have data transparency, financial transparency, trends, things like that? And clearly, you've understood the gap, and agencies like mine and others, like, some struggle immensely with that. So was that really around the focus, or how you put that idea together? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to through the journey of building both Mattermade and NBD. We've done some things well, we've done a lot of things poorly, and managed to have some success along the way. But the pattern for me was that there are kind of 2 key killers of profitability. If I look back on the journey, one of them is just in general, I feel as though agency owners tend to fly blind a lot of the time. They're looking at financials, a month and a half after the work actually took place, and they're trying to make business decisions based on these lagging indicators that just aren't great for leading a company and making smart business decisions. And beyond that, it's all a lot of gut feeling, for making decisions. And so that is the first killer. The second killer is just having messy back office. I think most agency owners don't go into becoming an agency owner with a background in finance, or because they're a business person. They probably started off as like passionate about being a marketer or being a designer, and then suddenly they hire a friend to help them, and fast forward 10 years, they've got 30 employees, and they're suddenly an agency owner. So I think the business side of back office and finance just becomes a weak spot, and that's where a lot of profit can leak out of these businesses. And so I wanted to take all of the learnings that I'd had over, all the painful learnings I'd had over the years with Mattermade and NBD, package them up and offer them as a service to other agency owners in the community. Essentially, we're at the end of the day, we're an accounting firm. So everything from bookkeeping, accounting, but really with this goal of helping agency owners increase their profit margins, and increase their financial clarity, visibility, so that they're not flying blind.
Love that. We'll talk more about Profit Labs in a second here. I'm curious, being a serial entrepreneur like you are, you weren't a practitioner, right? With Mattermade, you weren't, you had some design expertise, right? But you weren't a practitioner, you weren't a designer yourself. Talk to me about that, just having that business sense, Eli, that you do, that entrepreneurial spirit. It's like, how did you identify and like, okay, I'm going to start a demand gen agency fixated on paid media without having that? And how were you able to build up clients and get people to sign up with you guys? The same thing with No Boring Design, because I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, most agency owners I chat with, and a lot of business owners in general, I feel as though they find their niche, or they find the business that they end up owning and running happens kind of organically. They're like passionate about something, they spend a lot of time, and then just like over time, it becomes a business for them. I've always started businesses, not this most recent one, but certainly Mattermade, NBD, and the two businesses before that were always started out of fight or flight. So it was always this case of, I don't have a college degree. I don't have a work history aside from waiting tables. Other than that, I've worked for myself. Right. And so I have no quote unquote skills on paper. And for the longest time, I didn't even feel like I had skills I could put my finger on. I was just like, I'm good at doing a lot of things, and kind of like making things happen. And that was very vague. And you can't get hired with that kind of a pitch if you want to work somewhere. So my outlook was always like, this has to work. Whatever I'm starting has to work, or else I'm going to be waiting tables again. And when you're 20, that's not that big of a threat. But when you're, at the time when I started Mattermate, I was 28, going into entering 30 and thinking about having kids, that sounded horrifying. Right.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be homeless. Like, holy shit. So to get to your question, I have always just tried to play to that strength of, I know that I'm not the best person to do any of these things. So let me go find people who are the best people to do these things. Like, let me go find the best marketer I can hire and go tee up some business for them to work on and build from there. And the same thing with the designers. So yeah, I've always approached it in that way, where it's been very intentional. It's never just kind of happened organically. And I've had to force it.
Yeah, no, it's, and I can just attest to the individuals you've brought on for both of those agencies and just their expertise and commitment to professionalism. So it's, hats off to you guys, what you've been able to accomplish, and obviously the quality work that you've been able to deliver for extended period of time at this point. So really good stuff. You mentioned living in your mom's basement and how kind of that was inspiring. And you also mentioned the ability to kind of foreshadow a bit of like, okay, these are the kind of the goals. Talk to us about how you were able to put, I think goals in a lot of ways, kind of before I even asked that question, goals are intimidating to certain people. Goals are, yes, we need to get these out, but they're too lofty. I'm not going to adhere or be able to achieve those. How did you put together maybe a framework that worked for you around, okay, these are my goals. Maybe it's financially, it's building something that I'm proud of, it's being able to sell it, it's planning. At that point, you didn't have a significant other or any kids or assets or things like that. So I'm curious how what strategies did you use to put together those goals? And it feels like fairly progressive at a young age to be able to put those together. Talk more about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was coming up in the business world, it was a time when a lot of books were getting published about startup culture and, moonshot thinking. And so there's just a lot of the messages that I was receiving and taking in as I was figuring out what it meant to be what it meant to run a business was all about like, why not 10x yourself? Like 10x is easier than 2x or whatever, like that book. And why not, like you should be shooting for the moon. Like all the messaging was just fucking go for it. Like don't set incremental goals. And I think maybe one of the benefits of having never been an employee was that I wasn't used to incremental thinking. We're like, 20% year over year growth is great, right? Like that, like in a normal mindset, that is totally great. And to me, I was like, why aren't we 4xing every year? Like, and I would get obsessed with like, how do we do that? Or why, like we need to 10x. And then if we 4x, I'd be like, fuck, we missed our target. But like, okay, at least that was still, we can be better next year. And, you meet people who maybe worked a corporate job for a while and then started entrepreneurship, and they hear me talk like that and they're like, what the fuck are you like?
Where is this coming from?
Yeah. Are you kidding? So, I think that was maybe like an unintended perk of not having had a normal job, is I just didn't have realistic expectations, for what was possible. And that ended up playing to my benefit because I would just shoot my shot all the time.
Yeah.
And it ended up working out a few times. I think in general, my take on entrepreneurship is you really need to be comfortable with blind faith in yourself and in things working out. Because otherwise you'd just be crippled by indecision or crippled by all, is this even possible? And I still struggle with imposter syndrome all the time. But just having the faith of like, oh, like what, there are plenty of businesses out there that do 1 million in EBITDA. Why not me? Like, why? That just seems like, why not? So having the faith and being willing to like take the steps to give yourself a shot.
I think, what does that say to Eli about like our society as a whole? Like, you didn't follow that like logical succession of graduating college and getting your corporate job. And you're right, there is that mentality of like, okay, we can, incremental growth is fine. And that is fine in a lot of ways. But I think it was, that's just a great perspective that you have, because you weren't hindered by maybe the corporate planning or corporate structure, if you will, versus being an entrepreneur where you'd be like, no, I want to establish more of those unrealistic goals, but they're actually realistic. Right. So,
yeah. And I think one thing that's worth calling out just from like a transparency perspective is all of my businesses were built during like the most epic bull run ever. Right. Like, Mattermade and NBD, I talk publicly about our numbers and how profitable they were or are, but that was during this incredible economic boom time. So when I say like, oh yeah, it's like, why not this? Why wouldn't this be possible? And why isn't 4x year-over-year growth? Like that should be possible too. And then I was seeing that happen. And so it validated it. But now that we're in different times, I can acknowledge that like, that wasn't my skill necessarily. That was timing and luck. And so I think it's important for people who are maybe starting businesses now or running businesses now that like, maybe in this environment, 20, 30% year-over-year growth is great. And it's just like the time and the place. Mm-hmm. So
but never mind then. It was a luck of the draw, everyone.
Wrapping up the podcast.
Nothing to do with no, I agree with that. I mean, I think, right. What's that book? But it's like, you create luck, you create your own luck kind of thing. And I definitely subscribe to that. And I think, you need to make sure you celebrate that in the ability, because you had significant amount of experience, kind of the school of the hard knocks, if you will, with other different companies before you started the current two agencies. So let's talk about, a little bit around client acquisition and retention. Now, you guys have pivoted slightly. You've been some highs and lows in terms of the total employees with Mattermade. And you've restructured and kind of redefined your ICP, I think to a certain extent with MBD as well. What's worked with you? Give us maybe some, overarching thoughts around acquisition and retention. Does it fixate your ICP? Do you, the classic, do you niche down? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the case that you go into a new business with a hypothesis around what your ICP is going to be. And then you actually get some at-bats, you get some clients through the door, and you learn a lot really quickly. And maybe those learnings are, hey, we like this ICP, but we need to change our service offering to be more sticky with them and to increase retention. Or maybe, hey, like these first deals that we said yes to are actually not our ICP, and our ICP is more like, X. And I think it's this continual dance of what service offering are we great at delivering and interested in delivering, and how well does that match up with the ICP that we're currently in front of or want to be in front of? And then you can adjust either of those knobs. And so, yeah, both businesses have been, through the gamut as far as, and then there's external factors too, right? When we started Mattermade, everybody was growth at all costs, unlimited budget. If you can make us grow, we'll just throw money at it. Miss those times. But then it shifted, right? And then the VC market collapsed, and it suddenly became efficiency is everything. If you can find a way to grow efficiently, like everyone wants to work with you. And if you can't, there's no place. And so at that time we made a pivot where we still had the same ICP, but our messaging to them was completely 180. It was all about efficiency instead of all about growth. Yeah. And so that would be an example of like the offering or the product changing. An example of the ICP changing, same business now with Mattermade. We really focus on working with larger, more established, typically private equity backed software companies, just because the profile there really matches up well with the results that we deliver. And we've learned that in the case of Mattermade, getting like VC backed companies, there's a lot more drama as it pertains to leadership changes. A lot of these things are started by people who haven't ever run companies before, and then they get their funding and then they go through phases of like turning over leadership. More gray hair people come in, not that age has anything to do with it per se, but it's just like more experienced operators get put in place as the business gets more and more successful. And so every time that happens, you face an existential churn crisis as an agency, because that operator that's being brought in most likely has some agency that they've worked with over the years and they want to bring in. So you have a target on your back. Whereas with these private equity backed companies, I know I'm going like nerding out on the ICP thing here, but with the private equity backed companies, those operators know all that matters are the numbers. There's no like, what are your, they know that they are cogs in a machine that will fire them the minute they miss their target. And so they become obsessed with the numbers, and we're great at moving those numbers and improving them. So it's like everybody is aligned and they get out of the way and let us do our job, which is great, as opposed to, wanting to be a lot more involved and just the volatility. So that's an example of an ICP shift where we didn't change our product offering, but we just figured out that there was a better audience for that product offering.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just because I think when people think the ICP shift, they're thinking we're going to create a new niche, and we're going to go, down this, and where our services are going to change entirely, how we go to market. But yeah, you're saying, you really just pivoted based on the communication and the content that you're showcasing those individuals, and that's clearly seemed to work. Eli, something that you and I have talked about a few times in the past, of these concepts of growth-minded business versus lifestyle-minded business. And, I think there's a school of thought of like, you can only go one way, right? It has to be growth or it has to be lifestyle. You're a great follow on LinkedIn, just FYI to everyone listening, the hundreds of thousands of people listening. But you really fixate on the ability to maximize your time throughout the day, but still have a significant amount of time to focus on really what truly matters to you. Yes, business matters, but let's be clear, right? You and I both have kids, and we want to focus on those and develop better relationships with our significant others and travel and experience things like that. So yeah, talk to me about just that growth-minded versus lifestyle-related business. Do you think there's it's too separate, or is there ability to have it both, your cake and eat it too kind of thing? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible to have both, and I believe that there are seasons to business too. So, I'm the type of person where I'll go through phases where I'm like forcing myself to work, forcing myself to show up to meetings, dragging my feet, like I'm just exhausted and not feeling it. And then I'll go through phases where I want to work and I'm obsessed with what I'm working on. And I'm just like, there are not enough hours in the day that I could possibly pour into this thing. And so, and those ebb and flow. So, I also believe that in order for us to be our best at work, and this is like, a tired saying, but like, in order to be our best at work, we need to have a flourishing personal life. We need to be like a balanced human. If we're not a balanced human, we're going to show up and be a dick to our peers or not. It's just like our perspective isn't going to be whole enough. So, I certainly, as to your point, like have prioritized making sure that the personal side of my life stays balanced so that I can show up in the best way possible and drive growth. And I think up until this point, I've been very much in like growth mode. And now I'm transitioning more into lifestyle mode. But that isn't to say that I'm like less ambitious per se. I don't know. It's a weird psychological dance to play with yourself, right? Like And now having stepped out of those first two businesses and having leaders managing them independently, I basically set it up where it's like, here's the number that I want and need to make each year out of these businesses and that I expect. And then, their compensation is tied to upside. So to profitability. So it's like, you can choose. Like this number to me is pretty much like a lifestyle business. So you can, if you want to run a lifestyle business, cool. If you want to grow the shit out of this and make a ton of money, also cool. Not my decision anymore. As long as you meet the floor, like, I'm happy. And then it becomes a question of, what does this leader want to do? What mode are they in? So,
yeah, I think that's just massive for people listening that are just in that phase of, business ownership or, even the corporate world as well, but just being able to have the trust that you've given these people the ultimate trust of like, hey, run the shop, run the show. What comes to mind around that is how you delegate, right? Obviously you really fixate and us too, really fixate on bringing in strategic leaders that have significant experience in their particular practice areas. How are you, obviously you're giving them revenue targets, right? That's one of many, but are you still in charge of process? Or are you still influencing like that? And then also, are you, how involved are you in the day-to-day, those core components? I think as a founder too, it's like, I still want, to be involved in the sales side. I still want to be on the strategic side. I think I've always been impressed by you to be able to step back and empower your team and delegate to the truest form possible, right? Where you're really not too involved at all.
Yeah, completely. So I'm totally out of the day-to-day. I'm totally out of process.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, we're about to transition from weekly one-on-one with the leader of each of those businesses to monthly. And these weekly one-on-ones is basically a chance for them to give me a status update about anything they want to give a status update about, bounce ideas, or, gut check a decision,
Mm-hmm.
and vent. Essentially, it's like half therapy and half business, which, we all need that. But even that to me is like, there's still too much. I'm still hearing too much tactical like updates and details that I just don't like. That's not how those meetings should go in the fully realized version. Like when we switch to monthly, it'll be a lot more, because at a weekly cadence, the problem is I'm meeting with them frequently enough that they can involve me passively in some of their decision making around tactical things. So it's like, oh yeah, we're making this update to the project management thing, blah 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 blah, and they're looking for me to go, oh cool, that sounds like a good decision, or like, ooh, have you thought about X or Y?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like the place I'd like to get to, and we're going to get to next month, is if we're only meeting monthly, they've already long made those decisions like 3 weeks ago. They've rolled them out. So it's like, it's not a how, like, do you approve of this or not? It's just like, this is what happened. And maybe it's not even worth them bringing it up to me at that point. Hopefully it isn't, because, they're just giving me updates on key business metrics like profitability and how's sales doing and that sort of thing. To your question on like, what, how am I involved in sales or any of that? I've actually not been involved in, there's only been one sales deal I've gotten involved in. That's not true. Two sales deals I've gotten involved in the last year and a half, across Mattermade and NBD, because not in the last year. I want to be accurate. In the last year, 2 sales deals, because I brought in a seller, and now we actually just hired a second seller, and we're about to put an offer out to a third seller, which has been a huge unlock. Probably the biggest unlock for me as an agency owner was like bringing in someone to sell that isn't me, and which I was so afraid of for so long. So yeah, I digress. I went off on a tangent, but
yeah,
the TLDR is I give them a profitability target, and everything else is up to them. So they choose what their revenue targets are, all of that.
Yeah. And you're empowering them. I mean, you're like, hey, this is your agency to a certain extent, right? Your comp is tied into this. It's up to you to establish culture. It's up to you to establish updated SOPs and continue to be progressive, to be have that level of foresight. Selling, right? I love, the classic, entrepreneur. Oh, the founder. I'm the best at sales, right? I can do it the best. No one can replace me, right? I'm curious your thoughts because I know one of your lead salespeople. She's amazing, but I know there was kind of initial just okay, get up to speed, establish process, get things rolling before kind of that trust was made. Was getting out of sales, was that intimidating? And then also hiring is usually the most difficult thing of any business owner, as we know. What did you learn after hiring that first salespeople to make you pull the trigger on 2 additional salespeople? What's worked well, what hasn't? That's also a classic thing we hear quite a bit in the agency and business owner community is we hired someone that's in sales and they didn't close. Right. So, talk to us about the learnings that you had from her when you first hired her.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got to cheat quite a bit with that first sales hire. To your first question, I was very nervous about bringing in a seller because I had never done it successfully. In the past, I had hired an SDR that didn't work out. I had someone who was kind of sales adjacent trying to close deals that never worked out. So I felt like I had this track record of not like sales doesn't work for me or sales doesn't work for agencies, which is silly, but that was my headspace at the time. But the way that I got to cheat was my wife had a long career at Salesforce as a leader of sales teams. And so when I was thinking about bringing in a seller and trying it again, I ended up poaching her number one seller at Salesforce, who had decided she didn't, enjoy the corporate culture, wanted a better balanced job, and like a more collaborative, just a different environment. And so what that did for me was it took the question off the table of, is this person a good seller? Like I knew for a fact that I had 2 years worth of my wife managing the seller, knowing that she was great at her job and a great seller. So then the question was like, okay, if she can't close deals, it's not the seller. It's not sales isn't working. It's like there's something else. So that helped isolate the variable I was most concerned about. Because when we interviewing sales reps, they're all smooth talking,
yeah,
fun to chat with people. And so you think, oh yeah, they're going to be great. And then they get in the role and you don't know where to place the blame. Like, is it our pricing? Is it our offering? Is it the fact that I'm, as the founder, not on these calls anymore, that they're not closing deals, or is it them that they're just not actually that good? So removing that piece from the equation was really helpful for me psychologically. And then, yeah, I mean, you go through the normal adjustment process of getting this person, like they need to be able to speak in the same way that you speak about, what is our offering? Why does it matter? They need, but that's the case of any sales role, right?
Yeah.
They need to be able to. The thing that you lose when you bring in a seller at an agency is you lose the founder touch, right? And that's what I think most founders of agencies are afraid of is, yeah, but like I'm the founder, people want to talk to the founder. And that might be true, but the problem is as founders, most of us don't have the time for follow-up the way that sales should be handled, like rigorous, structured follow-up. And so you end up losing, I think my point of view on this is you lose more deals through poor follow-up and poor sales process because you don't have the time as the founder compared to the number of deals you win because of the founder touch. And if you have a good seller, they can just ultimately outsell you. I know for a fucking fact that our seller at NBD, the one that we've been chatting about so far, that she 1000% will outsell me every day of the week. There'll be more deals. They'll be higher. They'll close for a higher price point. Like she's just, because I'll have a sales call. I'm going through this right now with Profit Labs where I'm back in a sales seat and I'll have a sales call with someone and I'll go, okay, sweet. That was a good call. I need to follow up. And then I'll have another sales call right after that. And I'm like, okay, I need to follow up with that one. And then, the day ends. I'm like, shit, I got to go to kid pickup now, and I'll send those follow-ups tomorrow morning. Fast forward, it's been 3 days and I'm like, well, fuck, now this person's like, well, this guy's not very organized. Like, I don't want to work with, that. So that's why I'm a big believer in offloading sales to a professional.
Isn't it funny? Just like the basics of that, where we like, hey, that call went really well, but then, yeah, we're stacked with back-to-backs and we're just not getting back to them in a timely manner. And it does it should be, and it is incorporated in people's decision making of like, oh, how on it are they? Well, they don't have time for me, or they are too busy. Is that how it's gonna be with when we onboard, or when we onboard them, is they're not gonna have time. So I think those are just key components and really basics, right? That people need to just fixate on.
Totally.
Eli, another concept that you and I have talked about too, and just continues to be the name of the game here, and the trending acronym is around AI. And AI has been around, and ML stuff has been around for a long time, but now it's really being adopted by the masses. Where do you see? I know you're not in the day to day on the agency game for Mattermade or no NBD for that matter, but what have you been hearing? What's some foreshadowing that you can share on both of those businesses separate, right? Of how they're going to be utilized. Obviously with NBD, there's a lot of these, pundits that are coming out or saying that, oh, you're good. No design. We don't need you a designer anymore. You can just prompt engineer everything and you're good to go. And then on the paid media front, obviously we offer paid media too at Session. It's going to be all automated, all AI, minimal work involved. Talk to me about your thoughts around that, what you're seeing, and is that an agreeable statement? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. On the AI front, I think that it's really frothy out there right now. There's a lot of you go on LinkedIn and everybody's just regurgitating the same shit that they read someone else say. So I think there's a lot of ignorant thought leadership out there that isn't just saying anything really at the end of the day. So it's hard to know what to make of it. I my experience with it has been, there's a lot of promises, there's a lot of hype and excitement, but then whenever I actually dig in and start using the tool, it only goes so deep before you start to run into oh, this isn't quite, it's not quite right. And it's like, oh, it's actually really not quite right. And so it's I think AI is really good at sounding smart until you start digging into it and you go, ooh, this needs a lot of oversight and a lot of correcting. And so when you think about someone like a marketer, making the statement, if there's a marketing pundit, they're like, marketing is only going to be one person in, X amount of okay, so that person isn't a marketer then anymore. They're like a prompt engineer.
Exactly.
So then you need to hire a prompt engineer. So the question of let's talk about a designer, for example. I've played around with it's amazing what it can do, but good fucking luck getting it to create an on-brand fill in the piece of collateral that actually it's like, someone would argue with me. They'd be like, well, check this out. And they'll give it some brand guidelines and they'll give it some feedback and it'll pump something out that looks amazing. It'll look great. But then you're like, great, publish it with your logo on there, publish it. And they'll be, well, the font's not quite right. I'm like, great, then edit it. And they're like, well, it gave me a flat file and I can't actually do that. And I'm like, okay, great. Well then and those are just two examples, right? But it's just the devil's in the details, I think right now is the big limiting factor with AI. And even still, if we get to a place, and when I believe we will eventually get to a place where AI can replace, a designer, you're going to be hiring a design-oriented prompt engineer. So it's almost like the tool, instead of Figma, it'll be some sort of AI prompting interface, but you still need to have that you still need to know how to get it to the state that it needs to be. And that's I don't know. So I'm going a bit down a rabbit hole, but my general, if you want the hot take, my hot take is that most.
You heard it first here.
What's that?
You've heard it here first.
That's right. That's right. Hot take. My hot take is most agencies in 3 to 5 years will either be out of business or they will be meaningfully different than what they'll look meaningfully different than they look today. Mm-hmm. I don't think, I just don't, I think it is progressing fast enough that there will be some massive disruption to the way that, you and I are used to selling paid media, or we're used to selling design services or whatever it is. And some people will evolve and ride the wave, and other people will do what I'm doing right now and hide from the wave, at least emotionally. and I obviously my teams will evolve, and they'll figure out how to play the game. But
yeah, I think you bring up a great point that we're committed to is just making sure that there's a human involved at all times, making sure that there's significant amount. I think that's also too is just the prompt engineering process. It's never perfect. There's not one single prompt that is going to be good, right? You have to really educate it. And in talking with Paul Lewis, the CTO of Pythian, on a previous podcast, he was really echoed it. It's like you're turning yourself into a prompt engineer. You're essentially doing software development, and you're with the education you need to provide the prompts, because a lot of people are expecting, just add a particular prompt to get the output, the first output. And sometimes people are like, this is great. A lot of people that look into it are like, this is pretty bad. Like, what am I doing? And they maybe don't have the time or don't spend the necessary details around really enhancing that prompt to get it to where it needs to be. But I agree too in the design component, like, now we need to make subtle edits. It's like, okay, that's not going to happen. So, I think we're thinking about, I think you guys are too, to a lot of, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but is that strategic partner to help and help ideate and create different things. So we're not there yet, but yeah, you're right. Things are changing 100%. Kind of wrapping things up here, Eli, with you. I really appreciate your time. It is whose influences you? I mean, you've started a ton of companies. You're active with 3 right now, which is really impressive. Who inspires you on a daily basis? Who do you look up to in the space in terms of entrepreneurship, marketing, design? I'm curious there. And also to that is, if there are tools or software that you really like and endorse, I'd love to hear those as well.
Yeah. So there's this dude, Tyler, who runs an agency called Session Interactive. Yeah. So you're great. I've tried my absolute best not to be too snarky on this podcast, given our relationship. But anyway, so as far as influences, I'm not the type of person that points to anyone, like, X, Y, and Z people, or, this tool, that tool. I think I'm most inspired by people that I encounter in everyday life, who are living their lives the way that they want to live them, and that are making that possible by, making whatever decisions. If they're an entrepreneur, like they're setting up a business that serves that vision for their lifestyle, or if they're, maybe they're an employee and like they're finding they're making decisions so that they can live the life they want to live. And, people who are very much rooted in the present and not worried about the past or the future so much. And I think that stems from me not being great at that. Like, I'm always living in the future and worrying about the future. And it's something I'm actively trying to work on. But then you just meet people every now and then who are just so clearly like not concerned about the future. They're just like enjoying the present, and they're there with you, and they're really present. And so I find that when I encounter people like that, those are the people who inspire me.
Love that, man. And with our kids too, it's just like they bring us back to that present. They have no concept of the future, right? And let alone what's happening for dinner or any of that. It's where they're at right now. What can be fun and excited to them right now. Eli, where can I know you're, again, really active on LinkedIn. Where can people hear more about what you're doing and follow along? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn is the best place for, just connecting with me. And I write a lot about agency profitability there. So you can follow me there or connect with me. And then if folks are running an agency or a service business and interested in figuring out how they can increase profit margins, certainly they can go to profit-labs.co and check that out too.
Awesome. Excellent stuff, man. Thanks a lot for your time. We'll catch up soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks for listening to Built to Convert. If you're serious about growth, don't just listen. Subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for new episodes that drop straight into your feed. Until next time, keep building.